Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that I think is going to resonate with all of us.
Yeah.
How to squeeze just a little bit more awesome
Mm,
out of each and every day.
yeah.
And for this one,
Oh,
we are
yeah.
diving deep into this source called 15 Little Habits for a Better Day.
I love this source. You know what I really appreciate about it is
What's that?
it's not just like a list of, do this and do that.
Right.
It actually digs into the psychology,
Oh, interesting.
of why these habits work.
So it's not just like
Right.
drink a glass of water when you wake up. It's like,
Or
why,
like why?
why does that help?
Yeah, and how does that actually impact your brain?
Interesting. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
One of the things that this source starts off with
Hmm.
is this idea, and I found this fascinating,
Yeah.
that our brains don't always distinguish between what we imagine and what's actually real.
It's so true. And they tie that into this idea of visualization,
Okay.
which I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
Like if you can spend just a few minutes each night picturing yourself having a successful day,
Okay.
it actually primes your mind for success.
So you're saying it's not just like
Right.
a bunch of like positive thinking woo-woo stuff.
No, it's not just wishful thinking.
Wow.
It's about actually
Yeah.
training your brain
Oh, wow.
for success.
So there's like a scientific
Yeah,
basis for this?
absolutely. It's thought to activate something called mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons.
Yeah.
What are those?
So these neurons, they fire both when we do something
Mm-hmm.
and when we watch someone else do it.
No, that's interesting.
So when you vividly imagine yourself, crushing that presentation or
Yeah.
whatever your goal is,
Yeah.
your brain is actually kind of experiencing it
Oh, wow.
as if it's real.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so this source is also a big fan of
Oh, yeah.
aha
Mm.
moments.
Yes.
Those like little bursts of, insight or discovery.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think those are so important because they feed our need for competence,
Yeah.
When we have those aha moments, it's like, oh,
I can do this?
yeah, I figured that out.
Yeah, and it boosts our confidence.
The source says, and I love this, aha happens when we surprise ourselves with what we're capable of.
That's so true.
Okay, but it's not just about staying in our comfort zones, right?
Right.
The source also talks about this thing called flipping and straining knowledge,
Yes.
which sounds a little,
A little intimidating.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But basically it's about exploring stuff outside your normal interests.
Yeah, like if you're really into, history.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered like diving into astrophysics?
I mean, those seem
They seem totally different.
pretty different. Yeah.
But you might be surprised
Okay.
at the connections you could make.
Okay.
Astrophysics deals with these vast scales of time,
Right.
which could give you a whole new perspective on history.
Oh, that's interesting. And, more broadly,
Yeah.
learning outside your comfort zone
Mm-hmm.
just makes you a more interesting person.
Yeah.
It helps you see things from different angles.
The source says, and I think this is so important, learning outside of your comfort zone allows you to be part of different conversations.
I love that.
Okay, this one blew my mind.
Okay.
The source says that our eyes use up to 80%
Whoa.
of our brain's energy per second.
That's a lot.
I know. I thought that was crazy.
It is.
So what do we do with that information?
Well, the source suggests taking breaks,
Like-
like just closing your eyes for a few minutes.
Like, how often are we talking?
Even just a minute or two here and there can
Mhm.
make a big difference.
Really?
Yeah, it gives your visual system a chance to rest.
Okay.
And it can actually boost your creativity too.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So like when people say they get their best ideas in the shower,
exactly.
it's because their
Their mind is wandering. They're not
Mhm.
focused on anything specific.
the source calls closing your eyes
Yeah.
the simplest, quickest productivity hack.
It's true.
Okay, so one more mind hack before
Yeah.
we move on.
Okay.
The source talks about something called voicing the other side,
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
which is basically like,
Arguing with yourself
right.
in a good way.
Okay, so it's not like negative
But
self-talk.
no. It's about
Okay.
purposefully playing devil's advocate.
So like if I'm
Yeah.
trying to make a decision, I should,
Think about the other side.
okay.
Even if you're already leaning in one direction.
Okay.
Like, let's say you're thinking about changing careers.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just getting caught up in, the excitement of the
Right.
new job,
Yeah.
take some time to
What's the drawbacks?
the potential downsides,
Okay.
the things you might miss about your current job.
Yeah.
It helps you approach the decision with more clarity.
And the source says, and this is, I think, a great point, playing devil's advocate to your thoughts. slows down racing thoughts that seem uncontrollable.
Yeah, it helps you get a handle on things.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the mental game,
Right.
but this source also has
Oh, yeah.
some great tips about actions and
Mm-hmm.
routines.
Yeah.
And one that really stood out to me was
Yeah.
this idea of planned listening,
Oh, yeah.
which basically means like,
Picking your playlists,
Yeah.
your podcasts in advance.
I am so bad at that.
Me too.
I'm like scrolling through Spotify for like,
Yeah, you waste so much time.
I know, just deciding.
Okay, so how does planned listening help?
Well, it eliminates that decision fatigue,
Yeah.
when you're just like overwhelmed by choices,
Yeah.
and it can make things like chores
Mm-hmm.
way more enjoyable.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
The source points out our brains love listening to stories. It's a win-win combination.
That's so true.
Okay, and speaking of things that are good for you.
This source is a huge advocate for walking,
Oh, yeah.
especially in nature.
Especially in the...
So we all know that walking is good exercise,
Right.
but what about the mental benefits?
Yeah. It's amazing for your mental health.
Really?
Yeah. Reduces stress. It improves your mood.
Yeah.
Some studies even show it boosts creativity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The source puts it like this: walking turns on your mental muscles too.
I love
That.
that so.
So true.
Yeah.
Okay, and since we're on the subject of healthy habits,
Mhm.
let's talk about waking up.
Oh, yeah.
So this source is not a fan
Not a fan.
of the jarring alarm clock.
No, definitely not.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. You're sound asleep,
Mm.
and then suddenly,
Yeah.
this blaring noise,
It's like fight or flight.
exactly, it triggers your fight or flight response.
Right.
Which is not,
Not a good way to start the day.
no, not a peaceful way to wake up.
The source says, waking up to a screeching alarm immediately sets your fight or flight response on fire.
Yeah, no one wants that.
So what's the alternative?
Well, they suggest gentler methods,
Go ahead.
like maybe a sunrise alarm clock
Okay.
that gradually brightens,
Right.
simulating natural daylight.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah, or even just softer, more melodic sounds.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one I thought was kind of counterintuitive.
Okay.
The source actually recommends using procrastination to your advantage.
Now, hold on.
I know it sounds weird, right?
Yeah, usually procrastination is the enemy.
Right,
Yeah.
but in this case, they're talking about using it to curb impulse buys.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so we've all been there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You see something online, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I need that.
Add to cart.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But the source says if you just delay that purchase, like
Okay.
even for a day or two,
Yeah.
often you're like, you know what, I don't actually need that.
It's so true.
Right.
I've totally talked myself out of purchases that way.
The source talks about redirect that procrastination energy. Because sure, we want that instant gratification, but we can override that impulse.
It's a good strategy.
Yeah, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this next one I found really intriguing.
Oh, okay.
The source talks about channeling our tendency to obsess,
Okay.
but this time towards our hobbies.
I love that idea.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, because we're all,
Yeah.
prone to getting a little obsessed with things.
Right. Why not make it something
Exactly.
that brings you joy?
Like instead of obsessing over,
yeah.
the news or whatever.
Right. Or things you can't control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Channel that energy into...
Yeah, into learning a new skill.
Right.
Or creating something.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
The source puts it like this. We are prone to obsession, but what if we used it to dive into something rewarding, like a hobby?
I love that.
So true.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of developing new habits,
Yeah.
the source emphasizes this idea of
Right.
incremental progression. Yes, that's so key.
Which basically means,
Small, gradual increases in effort
Right.
over time.
so like if you're trying to exercise more,
Yeah,
don't go from like
right.
couch potato to marathon runner overnight.
Exactly.
Okay.
Start small,
Mm-hmm.
be consistent,
Yeah.
and gradually increase the intensity or the duration.
And the source says, focus on incremental progression. Do slightly more of it the next day.
It's all about building sustainable habits.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is one I'd never heard before.
Okay.
The source actually encourages us to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to our beneficial impulsive thoughts
Oh, yeah.
and act on them.
Okay, now this doesn't mean like
Right.
throw all caution to the wind.
Yeah.
But it's about recognizing those impulses that might actually lead to something good.
So give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you have this sudden urge
Mhm.
to call a friend you haven't talked to in a while.
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay.
Or you see an interesting event happening in your town and you're like, oh, should I go?
Yeah,
To go.
don't overthink it. Just
Yeah.
do it.
Exactly.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
The source says, pay attention to your impulsive thoughts and quickly decide how much they'll benefit you versus their potential consequences.
I love that.
Okay, we're in the home stretch.
Almost there.
The source ends with some tips
Mm-hmm.
for being more efficient and focused.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the 2-minute rule,
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
which basically means,
If it takes less than 2 minutes,
yeah.
just do it now.
Okay, so we're talking like,
Yeah, like answering a quick email, putting away a dish,
yeah,
making a short phone call.
okay,
All those little things that can pile up.
right, and clutter your mind.
Exactly.
It's like the source says, it's the small tasks that take up most of our clutter in our minds.
That's so true.
Okay, and then one more tip.
Okay.
This one's a little unusual.
All right.
The source recommends working
Yeah.
on only one task per sheet of paper.
I like that idea.
So like if I'm working on a big project,
Mm-hmm.
each piece of paper.
Represents one step,
Okay,
one component.
interesting.
Yeah, it helps you stay focused
Okay,
and prevents your mind from jumping around.
the source explains, it helps to make decisions faster and then act completely on that decision before moving on.
It's a good system.
Yeah, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, let's
Right.
talk about flow of space.
Yes, this is a good one.
So what is flow of space?
It's about designing your environment to support your habits and your goals.
So it's not just about like
Right.
decluttering.
No, it's about being intentional with how you arrange your space.
So like
Yeah.
if you want to read more.
Create a cozy reading nook.
Okay.
If you're trying to eat healthier,
Yeah.
make sure your kitchen is organized.
Right.
So that healthy foods are easy to access.
Front and center.
Exactly.
Make it easy to do the things you want to do.
Yeah.
And harder to get sidetracked. The source puts it like this. You have to build a space that follows your ideal movements.
I love that.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Well, this has been,
It's been a good deep dive.
yeah, a really fascinating look at all these little things
Yeah.
we can do to improve our lives.
You know, I think the key takeaway here is that you don't have to make these huge changes
Right.
to see results.
Small changes add up.
Exactly. Pick one or two
Yeah.
of these
That
habits.
resonate with you.
Yeah.
Try them out.
And see how you feel.
That's such great advice.
Yeah.
And I challenge everyone listening
Yeah.
to think about their own flow of space.
Yeah.
Like what small changes can you make to your environment
Yeah.
to make it easier?
To achieve your goals.
Yeah, to reach those goals.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Keep diving deeper.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.